thought was dead wasn't. 6 months ago, she vanished in a blaze of glory, sacrificing everything to stop an unstoppable enemy. The galaxy mourned. The war moved on. But now, whispers are spreading through the stars. Enemy fleets falling apart, missions disrupted by a ghost ship. She's back, and this time she's not just fighting to win. She's here to finish what she started. This is the story of a spark that refused to die and became a legend. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The galaxy wasn't what anyone had hoped for. When humans first stepped into deep space, they imagined wonder, unity, and discovery. But what they found was something much closer to a galactic playground filled with powerful cliques, constant tension, and unspoken rules that no one had warned them about. Out there, humans weren't pioneers or heroes. They were the strange newcomers, the odd ones out, the species with too much heart and far too little sense. To the older, more established civilizations, humans looked like children playing dress-up. In armor, flying ships held together with hope and duct tape. The Droxian Axis, a fearsome empire known for its domination and cruelty, didn't bother hiding its disgust. Standing over 8 feet tall with skin like iron plates and voices that rumbled like storms, the Droxians believed in strength, obedience, and complete control. Their idea of diplomacy was a choice: kneel or vanish. Planet after planet had fallen under their shadow, their warships spreading like rust across the stars. They didn't negotiate. They conquered. Against them stood the Free Systems Alliance, a mix of species that had only recently agreed to work together. The alliance was held together not by trust or unity, but by fear. Fear of the Droxians and what they would do if left unchallenged. Each species in the alliance brought something unique. The Shenarans offered knowledge, the Dalari lent strategy, and the Varnan gave numbers. But together they still lacked one crucial thing: unpredictability. That's where humans came in. No one could quite understand them. They acted strangely, in battle, often risking their lives for things that didn't seem to matter: honor, friendship, even hope. While other species valued efficiency and logic, humans would charge into hopeless fights simply because they believed they might win. And sometimes they did. Their unpredictability became their strength. Their wild moves and bizarre tactics kept enemies guessing. And among these unpredictable humans, one stood out more than the rest: Lieutenant Kayla Morin. Kayla wasn't born a hero. She wasn't tall or loud or decorated with medals. She was quick, clever, and always smiling at the wrong times. Other officers thought she was reckless, unprofessional, even dangerous. But her team loved her, because in the middle of chaos, when fear was thick in the air, Kayla made them laugh. She made them feel like maybe, just maybe, they'd get through. And during the Battle of Varick's Edge, that spirit would be tested. Varick's Edge was a critical point in space, home to a hyperspace junction that connected several major systems. Whoever controlled it could shift the course of the war. The Alliance sent in a large fleet, confident in their strategy. They had maps, data, and a detailed schedule of Droxian patrols. What they didn't know was that the Droxians had changed their plans. When the Alliance fleet arrived, they found triple the expected enemy force waiting. The battle turned ugly fast. Ships exploded around them. Communication broke down. Chaos took over. Kayla, stationed aboard the command vessel, watched as her commanders argued over retreat strategies. They didn't see any way out. She did. Without permission, she grabbed a small corvette, the kind of ship used for scouting missions, and rallied 5 volunteers. No one asked where they were going. They just followed her. When the Dalari captain in charge caught up with her in the hangar, he demanded a plan. She only grinned and said, "Something really, really stupid." They launched into the heart of the Droxian fleet. The corvette, later named Flicker by those who remembered it, danced through the fire like a ghost. Kayla had made changes to the ship's jump drive, changes that engineers said were impossible. She didn't care. With a shaky hand and stubborn will, she pushed the limits of physics. The ship blinked out of normal space for 2.3 seconds. When it returned, it was behind the enemy's command vessels. Then everything exploded. 3 Droxian dreadnoughts, the pride of their fleet, burst into flames within moments. No one saw what hit them. Alliance ships watched in shock. The Droxians, thrown into confusion, pulled back. For the first time in months, the Alliance had a win. But it came at a cost. The flicker was gone. No signal. No escape pods. Just silence. Lieutenant Kayla Morin was listed as killed in action. Her name was added to memorials. Her last known words, "Try not to miss me too much," were played at recruitment rallies. On 17 planets, statues were built in her honor. Even the Droxians felt her loss. Internal messages from their command used a new term: the anomaly that must not return. But strange things started to happen. Outposts went dark with no explanation. Patrols abandoned positions for no clear reason. Some claimed to see a small unfamiliar ship slip past their scanners just before alarms sounded and systems failed. The Alliance dismissed it all as superstition, just rumors, ghost stories. Still, some soldiers began whispering in quiet moments. She's not gone. They didn't know how, but they believed. And far out beyond the edge of known space, a single figure stared out into the black, her eyes sharp, her hands steady, and her mission far from over. Captain Torin Voss didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in facts, maps, and logic. He believed in things he could see with his own eyes and track with clean data. But lately, nothing was making sense. Patrol reports didn't match scanner logs. Surveillance feeds showed shadows that left no footprints. Entire outposts had gone quiet without any sign of an enemy ship. Torin had spent the last 6 weeks connecting scattered pieces of chaos across the outer edge of Alliance space. What he found wasn't proof, not exactly. But it was something strange, something familiar. The war against the Droxian Axis had reached a painful rhythm. Fight, retreat, regroup, repeat. The Alliance wasn't winning, but they hadn't been crushed either. They were surviving barely. The Droxians had more ships, better armor, and tighter discipline. The Alliance relied on teamwork and hope, 2 things that didn't always hold up under pressure. Torin had long since grown tired of sitting behind command desks and reading casualty reports. When his own brother's ship went missing near the edge of the Sarnath Divide, Torin requested a field assignment. He needed answers. What he found instead was a mystery. At first, he thought the missing patrols were due to Droxian ambushes. That made sense. The Droxians were brutal but smart. But then he saw the patterns. The attacks weren't random. They were targeted, specific. Someone was going after Droxian supply lines and communication stations, fast and quiet. No witnesses, no survivors, no evidence left behind, except wreckage and the occasional scrambled signal echo. The other commanders didn't care much for his theories. It's an enemy trick, they said, or a natural phenomenon. But Torin wasn't convinced. Late one night, he found an old record buried deep in the archives, a scan of a ship signature from months ago. It matched the readings from a destroyed Droxian cargo hauler near the Eros Belt. The signature belonged to a vessel named Flicker. That wasn't possible. Flicker had been destroyed at Varick's Edge. Everyone knew that. Lieutenant Kayla Morin and her crew had been declared dead, celebrated as heroes, mourned across 17 systems. But the match was there, clear as daylight. Torin couldn't explain it. Not yet. But he couldn't ignore it either. He reached out to Commander Lyra, a Sayari officer known for her sharp instincts and cold logic. She didn't laugh at him when he told her his theory. Instead, she frowned and asked for details. Lyra had seen strange things too. Droxian units breaking formation for no reason. Fleet movements that didn't follow their usual patterns. She didn't believe in ghosts either, but she believed in signs. Together, they followed the trail deeper into the edge of explored space toward the Sarnath Divide, A quiet region full of old debris, faint stars, and more questions than answers. The journey wasn't easy. Their small crew, made up of a handful of engineers and scouts, operated under complete silence. No transmissions, no lights, no chatter. They moved like shadows, hoping to catch whatever was out there before it disappeared again. Days passed with nothing but static and empty space. Then it happened. A faint signal, weak, barely there, but unmistakably human. Torin's heart pounded as they tracked the signal to a dead asteroid cluster. As they approached, Lyra spotted something, movement, a blur, then a shape. A ship, hovering silently, cloaked in shadows. The scanners blinked. The ID matched. Flicker. No one spoke. They didn't dare. The ship moved, slipping away like a ghost into the black. Torin gave the order to follow. Engines hummed softly as they chased it through a maze of floating rock. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the ship stopped. A message came through. Short, clear, and impossible. Took you long enough. The voice was Kayla Morin's. The crew sat frozen. Lyra whispered something under her breath in her own language. Torin didn't speak, didn't move. The voice continued, calm and steady, like nothing had changed. I figured someone would come, eventually. You're slower than I expected. Kayla invited them aboard. They approached with caution, guns ready, minds racing. When the airlock opened, there she stood. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her. Same smile, same fire in her eyes. Kayla Morin, the lost lieutenant, the legend, alive. She explained everything. The modified jump drive had thrown her out of normal space and into a strange pocket between dimensions. Time didn't work the same there. She'd been gone only weeks in her mind, but 6 months had passed for everyone else. Her ship had barely survived, but she'd rebuilt it piece by piece. And when she learned the war was still going, she decided she wasn't done fighting. Alone, she'd been hitting Droxian outposts using stealth, speed, and creativity. She avoided the Alliance because she knew they'd either try to control her or not believe her. She needed to be free to move, to strike, to keep the enemy guessing. Torin didn't know what to say. For the first time in his life, the impossible was standing in front of him, alive, real, and more determined than ever. The myth had returned, and nothing would be the same. The flicker moved like a whisper through space, its engines so quiet even nearby sensors failed to notice. It was not a large ship, nor impressive by design, but it was fast, unpredictable, and controlled by someone who had nothing left to fear. Lieutenant Kayla Morin sat at the helm, her fingers dancing across controls she had rewired by hand. She had grown thinner over the months, her once short hair now tied back in a loose braid, her uniform patched and faded. But her eyes remained, sharp, full of purpose, and her voice calm, steady. For Kayla, survival had become second nature, but now it was time to do more than survive. After the reunion with Captain Torin Voss and Commander Lyra, Kayla agreed to return with them, temporarily. She had made it clear she was not rejoining the military ranks. I don't take orders anymore, she said, her tone firm but not angry. They didn't argue. The sight of her alive was miracle enough. They took her back to the Alliance's mobile outpost in the Riven sector, where news of her return spread like wildfire. Some believed it, many didn't. The ones who had fought beside her before didn't care. They knew the fire in her soul. That fire hadn't gone out. It had only grown hotter in the dark. The Alliance was in no shape to question miracles. They had been losing ground for weeks. Droxian fleets were tightening their grip on the outer colonies, cutting off supply lines and choking communication routes. Morale was low. Fear was spreading. Commanders argued over strategies that went nowhere. Some even spoke of surrender in hushed tones. But Kayla brought with her something more valuable than hope: information. She had maps, codes, patterns, all gathered from months of sneaking through enemy lines. Her small ship had done what no spy drone could. With Torin's support, she presented her findings to a circle of officers and strategists. There was one target she wanted above all: the Droxian relay hub buried in the Noctis Ring, an asteroid field known for its deadly navigation paths and high radiation. The relay hub was invisible to most scans and heavily guarded, but it was the nerve center of the Droxian communication network in that region. Destroy it, and the enemy's control would crumble, at least temporarily. High Command was hesitant. The plan was dangerous, based on assumptions, and relied too much on Kayla's instincts. But Torin argued in her favor, and Lyra backed him. "What do we have to lose?" Lyra asked, her voice calm but sharp. "Another day of doing nothing?" In the end, they agreed. Kayla would lead the mission, using the flicker to draw out the defense units while a team of Alliance strike ships hit the relay from behind. It was reckless. It was risky. It was exactly the kind of plan Kayla was known for. The night before, the mission, she sat alone in her ship, staring at a worn-out photo of her original crew, the 5 volunteers who had followed her to what they believed was certain death. None of them had made it. She whispered their names one by one, a quiet promise in the dark. This time she would return. For them. When the day came, the flicker jumped into the edge of the Noctis Ring. The asteroid field was as chaotic as ever. A spinning maze of jagged rock and violent bursts of energy. Kayla flew through it like it was home. The Droxians reacted fast, sending 6 interceptors and a heavy warcruiser after her. She didn't try to run. She pulled them deeper into the field, weaving through danger, always staying just ahead of their fire. Meanwhile, Torin led the strike team in silence, slipping through a hidden path Kayla had marked weeks before. They reached the relay station just as Kayla triggered her ship's energy burst, blinding the enemy for 3 minutes. It was enough. The strike team planted charges, took out the command tower, and pulled back without a single loss. The relay exploded in a burst of orange and blue light. Communications across that region of Droxian space went dark. Their fleet movements fell into confusion. Alliance forces in nearby systems saw an immediate difference. Raids slowed, reinforcements stopped coming, and for the first time in weeks the enemy began to retreat. Kayla barely made it out of the asteroid field. Her ship was damaged, her systems failing, but she refused to send a distress signal. She landed on a barren moon not far from the strike zone and waited, hoping someone would find her before the cold took her. It was engineer Mirandel and pilot Harrow Jin who found her, tracking her signal hours later. They carried her aboard with care, her lips cracked, her voice weak, but her eyes still fierce. "Told you it'd work," she whispered. When they brought her back, the outpost welcomed her not just as a survivor, but as a spark. A spark that had started a fire. The war wasn't over. The Droxians would regroup. But now, the Alliance had a story to tell. A fighter once thought lost had returned. A single pilot in a patched-up ship had shaken the enemy. And the fire she lit had only just begun to burn. The stars above the battle zone burned with a cold light, indifferent to the chaos unfolding below. For the Droxians, this was supposed to be another routine sweep, tighten control, crush resistance, remind the galaxy who held power. But something had shifted. Their relay station in the Noctis Ring was gone. Their communication grid, once perfect and precise, now buzzed with gaps, static, and silence. Orders were delayed. Patrols were missing. For the first time in years, the Droxian Axis was reacting instead of commanding. And behind this confusion was a name they refused to speak out loud, a name carried in whispers. The one who returned. Kayla Morin had become more than a soldier. She was now a myth walking among the living. But Kayla didn't care about being a legend. She cared about keeping the momentum alive. The Alliance needed more than stories. They needed real victories. The raid on the relay had given them space, to breathe, to regroup. But the Droxians would not remain disorganized for long. Kayla knew that, and she wasn't done yet. Back at the hidden outpost in the Riven sector, she stood before a war table surrounded by commanders and field officers. Their faces were tired but alert. They listened to her now, not because of rank or orders, but because she had done what none of them could. She had turned the tide. Using her gathered intelligence and the Droxians' recent slip-ups, she laid out a plan. There was another target, an incoming fleet gathering near the shadow side of a gas giant called Juros. The fleet was meant to crush the Alliance's remaining foothold in Sector 9. If it arrived on schedule, the last of the local resistance would be wiped out. But Kayla had a plan to stop it before it began. The mission was bold, even reckless. Using the flicker, still barely patched up, Kayla would create a diversion by triggering false alerts in nearby Droxian sensor arrays. Meanwhile, a combined squadron from 3 species would use old asteroid tunnels to approach the staging area undetected. If they timed it right, they could hit the Droxians before their ships were fully active. If they failed, they would be trapped in open space with no support. No one offered to lead the attack. Kayla didn't wait for volunteers. She simply nodded and said, "We go at sunrise." And no one stopped her. The next day, the mission launched. Kayla flew ahead, her ship patched together with spare parts and stubborn determination. Every alert she sent to the Droxians worked like bait, drawing scout ships away from their positions. She danced around them, dodging weapons fire, always one step ahead. Behind her, the Alliance strike force moved through the tunnels, silent and invisible. At just the right moment, they emerged. What followed was chaos, fast, brutal, and beautiful. Explosions lit up the sky like stars falling in reverse. Droxian cruisers, still powering up, were caught off guard. Their formation crumbled under the sudden blow. Kayla circled back, targeting the central command carrier with everything she had. Her ship shook violently, alarms screaming, but she didn't stop. When her weapons overheated, she manually fired the backup launchers. When her shielding failed, she rerouted energy from non-essential systems. She moved like someone with nothing left to lose. And then, the Droxian flagship exploded. With their leader gone, the remaining Droxian forces scattered. Some tried to regroup, others fled. The Alliance ships pursued briefly, then pulled back, knowing they had done enough. The skies grew quiet again, and for the second time, Kyla Morin vanished. This time it wasn't space or time that took her. It was her own ship, overworked, overstressed, and pushed beyond limits. Flicker broke apart during re-entry to a nearby moon's atmosphere. No. Signal came, no message, just silence. Hours passed, then a day. The Alliance scanned endlessly, desperate for any trace. Torin Voss refused to leave the area. He kept a shuttle crew on standby. And finally, just as hope began to fade, a small pod was found nestled in a crater of ice and rock. Inside was Kyla, unconscious, bruised, but breathing. When she woke, she smiled the same old smile. "Miss me again?" News of her survival spread like a second wave of energy. This time, even those who hadn't believed the first time came to understand what she meant to the war. Kayla wasn't just a warrior or a pilot. She was proof that courage could survive the impossible, that one person's fire could light 1,000 more. As the weeks passed, the Droxians grew quieter. Their forces pulled back from border sectors. Rumors flew that their high command was changing tactics, trying to plan around the human element, a phrase they now feared. Alliance morale surged, recruitment increased. Even the most hopeless regions began to hold on again. At a small ceremony, back at the Alliance base, a display case was unveiled. Inside was Kayla's old helmet, cracked but still intact, and beneath it, a plaque that read, "She burned alone in the dark so we could see the way forward." Kayla didn't attend the ceremony. She was already gone again, out in the stars, flying low, hunting shadows and keeping the flame alive. Her legend would echo through the galaxy, not because she couldn't die, but because every time they thought she was gone, she came back stronger. And somewhere out there among the stars and silence, the flicker flew again.